Fringe North Podcast Series. So each episode will have some exciting guests from an amazing community of performers and creators who will give us an inside look into both their lives as artists and what they're bringing to the festival this season. Hello, bonjour, Annie. Hola.
I'm so excited to be joined by Samantha Buttery. Sam, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get talking about your artistic inspiration and what you have planned for the Fringe Festival this season, would you be able to introduce yourself to the audience, to people who are watching from their homes, and just give us a little idea of what you do and what you're about?
Yeah. So I'm Samantha Buttery. I'm from Sudbury, Ontario, and I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Laurentian University. It is a specialization in motion picture arts. So I do a lot of screenwriting as well as stage writing. And I also direct short films as well. So I do a few different crafts under my belt. And yeah, I mean, that's the main part of my existence. It's creating these different types of artwork. So
awesome. So how did you get involved in theater, and the kind of what led you to take this path?
Well, actually, I had took a class in school. We took playwriting, and it was in 2019. So one of my final years at university with Matthew Haiti. Took that class, and I think it was just I hadn't actually dived into playwriting itself. I did like a lot of theater classes, but that was more performance based and not so much the writing aspect, which is strange for me. Usually it would be the reverse, and so I thought, oh, this is the time to do it, and ended up really loving it, and then kind of really falling into it. Just like it was a very natural falling in love moment with the craft. And so we ended up writing an assignment, and it was to write just either a scene or like one act of a play. It really was your choice. And then in the second semester, we did another similar project, and you could either continue the one you did in the first semester or do a different one. And so I'd written quite a few scenes of a play, and then I finished it in the second quarter, and I thought, oh, this is. I was obsessed with it. I was like, this is great. I want to write something else. And in that class, came up with the idea for the play that I put into Fringe this year. And so that's kind of how everything was born. Everything was kind of from that class. So it was a happenstance meeting.
Cool. So you were focused. So when you went to Laurentian, you initially went in focusing a bit more on the performance side. When I first joined Laurentian, I was supposed to be doing a major in English, rhetoric, and media studies. And then I took a minor in communications. And then around 2016, so a couple years after I joined Laurentian, that kind of changed. And I found myself really falling in love with the film industry and everything of that. So I changed my academic course, and I ended up taking my specialization in film, dropping ERMS, dropping communications, and then and a lot of electives. I took a lot of more performance, like the theater, intro to theater. That was more of a performance, and history based on, But then I kind of started leaving that behind. And I mean, I've done theater like performance wise growing up, but it wasn't the fit, I liked the world of theater, but that wasn't the aspect of it that I was meant to be. So it was kind of a weird thing. I don't know why it didn't occur to me at the time that maybe I wanted to write theater. Yeah. It's so funny to think back on, because it's just the natural course for me is always writing and writing and writing. And it never occurred to me to put those two together. And then when it did, it just lightning strikes, and I was like, oh, this makes more sense. Ended up being behind the scenes is a way more my style. So yeah, that's amazing. I love hearing how people kind of fall into their path. I mean, some folks, it's like they know from day one, or when they're very young, that they want to do something and they kind of just go after it. But yeah, I have a similar experience, not so much in
in terms of, don't have a theater background, but I do have an arts background. I did a BFA for my undergrad. So I understand that kind of like, oh, this is possible and I might continue to do this and this really works. And it just kind of, once the spark hits, it feels kind of right. And that's really exciting to hear that you're here now, and you are bringing your play What Remains this year to Fringe North. You did explain that it kind of started in your last year at Laurentian. What was the inspiration to write this piece?
So the play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which just had that really wonderful performance in Toronto, which is funny because just this is where that idea came from. It just happened to be this year that had a big resurgence. But it was from that play. I did that play for a project, and it was a different class, but it was another theater-related class. I think it was dramaturgy. And we did that class, and I had a project due, and I used that play to complete the project. I finished it. I read it. And I just really loved the dialogue and the very dry but witty sense of humor it has. Very quick dialogue, and it just really tickles my funny bone. And so that's kind of how it started. I had that just in the back of my mind, and it just wasn't going away. I didn't really know what to do with it at first. And then I think at the time when we were in playwriting class, I was thinking of more ideas. The play that I written for class was like a bit of a murder mystery, Clue-esque type piece. And I thought, this was so much fun. And I kind of want to write something else. And I think just those two things came together. And I thought, well, we were also doing I had a Shakespeare class going on. And I thought, well, what if I take, the stylization of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and mixed it with this idea that somebody or two people have taken the bones of William Shakespeare and have absconded with them and made it into a really dark comedy, but with that kind of really dry, witty sense of humor, with that really quick way of speaking. And that really was how it started. And it's a historical fact, William Shakespeare was a real person. This is a real poem put on his gravesite. There's a lot of really factual things, but we're turning it into something, like something that's not real. And so putting those two things together really it just kind of ran with it. As soon as it came together, I was like, oh, that's going to be the funniest thing I'm ever going to write. Let's do it. And it just took off from there. So that's kind of how, and it's just a lot of random ideas that came together. And it's hard to explain, especially after the fact, how they kind of came together. But those are the random thoughts that kind of had to come together to make it work in the first place.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you receive any assistance in your writing process? Like, do you get people to edit? Or is it mostly kind of on your own, like to just hammer it out?
In terms of the writing, it's on my own. But when it comes to like reading, rereading, revisions, and all this process of it, that I have certain people in my life that I will be like, I've written this scene, read it, give me an honest reaction, and then I'll, so I do have, there's outside help when it comes to that. And like, oh, I think it's funny here. I didn't really laugh here. Maybe like, or exchanging ideas, brainstorming ideas. Then I have outside help for sure. I have specific people that that are very honest with me, that I know aren't gonna, just try to make me feel good. Like they are in it to help me creatively. And so I'm very selective about who I choose that, because I'm trying. It's like I don't take that personally. It's very much like we're both working towards the same thing, which is making this scene or this piece, as the best product that it can be. But in terms of creative, like just writing it down and I hammer that out by myself, and then I go out with asking for opinions.
That's a huge part, like an important part of, I think, being an artist, right? Having that community that you can trust. You have the community that supports your work, which is great. You always need kind of positive reinforcement. But it's especially important to have like critique on your work for sure. But could you tell me a little bit about what it's like being an artist in Sudbury? And you're a part of a few boards. Well, you're part of Play Smelter. You participate in Play Smelter, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about your involvement and what that entails?
Yeah. So Play Smelter itself, I'm still relatively new, I guess, to that world. I started being involved in that in 2022, I believe. And that was, I think, one of the most exciting, because it was with this play. And it was very exciting, especially up here, because I mean, for me, there's a lot of things that happen. Like, there's a lot of like theater resources and things that they do, like events and whatnot. But I was never really involved in that at first. And so when I got invited into that, it was a big deal, and the community actually is very close, and so it's now I get to run into people that I know and that I recognize from Play Smelter or from other places, and it's very exciting, and you make really good friends. First coming in was a bit scary because I didn't really do a lot of even the writing of plays, like any kind of theater. It was very new, and so I almost felt like a bit of a fraud coming in at first. But everyone was so nice, and everybody was like, "Oh no, this is a family, and come on in." And so I think that's a really good thing about Northern Ontario, like, with the arts community in general. It's very welcoming and wonderful, and you get to make relationships like that. So Play Smelter is very much like that. It's a family, and because it's annual, you get to see those people again year after year, and you kind of fall back into like your groove with them. And that was really nice. And we got to do a dramatic reading, stage reading of the play. I had friends of mine that I knew perform, and also people that I'd never met before do that. And it was really well received, and we had a blast rehearsing, and it was just like the most positive experience I could have had. And because of that, I got to participate in the year afterward, and now, even if I don't participate as a playwright in Play Smelter, I still show up to the festival. If I have no work to submit, like this year just came through, I had no work to submit because I was so focused on getting this off the ground. I still got to go and see friends of mine and people that I know do their pieces, and got to cheer them on, as an audience member. And even that it's just as thrilling as being a part of it as an artist. So it was the best thing I could have done, was agree to do Play Smelter. It was great.
That's amazing. You mentioned EARP. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience and like how it came about and what came of it?
So this is my first year doing Fringe. It's also, of course, also my first year being involved with EARP. And so at this time, we haven't really started too much. Yeah. But when I submitted to the festival, I submitted, my application and whatnot, and then I saw EARP on the side, and I thought, well, still, even though now it's been a few years since I've been involved in the world of theater, it's like I'm still very new, and I'm the first person to admit that at no point am I ever going to be like, oh, well, I don't need that. Like, it's very much, I want to keep learning and keep sharpening my skills, and there's always something to learn. Even if I'm 75, there's more to learn. So I was very much gung-ho to go and apply and see what kind of support there was, for Northern Ontario artists, but also what they had to offer me, even intellectually, any kind of. So I ended up applying, and I thought, well, I'll get one or the other or none, but I just want to be involved. I just want to be, around artists and see what's going on. So at first, when I got the acceptance email for Fringe for the festival, that was just like, I was elated. And then not too long later, there was a conversation that happened, and I got to also be pulled along into EARP. And I think there was a bit of like, I wasn't 100% clear on what EARP was offering, or what they really were about. And then I got to kind of have I had a really nice conversation between myself and Garrett, and figure out, the whole point of it is to provide as much extra support as we can, in these different facets, so that you feel that you can produce the best result, quality of work that you want, however we can support that. And I thought that was so nice and really important, especially for people up north. If we don't always have all the resources that, Southern Ontario does, or, in the States, they have those kinds of things. So those kinds of systems in place, to me, that was really exciting, and really how that was a really wonderful, development that came with everything. So I got really excited to be involved. So like I said, we haven't done too much yet because we're still early on, but just from those conversations and what I know the mission is with that, it's really exciting. So
yeah, that's awesome to hear. I think Garrett Garrett's going to be a great contact for you. He's a huge advocate for theater, and he produces his own plays. I know he's performing at the theater, or at the Fringe Festival this year as well. So that's great to hear. So you mentioned you're pretty new to writing into the theater world, but I think it sounds like there's so much energy, and you're really taking advantage of opportunities, which is really awesome. You were part of the OAC for Northern Arts, right? The Ontario Arts Council. Was that okay? Can you tell me a bit about that experience, how you got involved in that?
Yeah, so creative writing, I've been doing that since I was in the second grade. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. The newness really is to theater in general, and so the OAC ended up finding me through Pat the dog. They had run Northern Arts Creation Unit, which was at the time it was the first one they'd done, and that really was a way for Northern Ontario artists to really connect virtually. I think we were still it wasn't too early, the pandemic. We were kind of in the middle of it, it was 2022 or early 2023. So we were kind of coming out of it, but still feeling a bit, alone, I guess. And so it was a way to connect virtually. I think we had done it. I think it was every week. Now my memory's starting to fade a bit, but it was we would meet regularly online on a Zoom meeting. And I think there was about 10 of us, and we would get to chat about all things writing and ideas, and do exercises, and really develop a piece that we were going to do a cabaret at Play Smelter, and and perform what we worked on. And they had released a bit of a blurb about it on their website, and OAC found me on that blurb, and each person had a little bit of a highlight about who they are and what their biography is. And they read mine, and I guess they were reading that I had experience now with the theater world, and I was creative writing with with stories and poetry, but also I had film experience and everything. So they felt that I had a bit of a wide scope of experience, and they liked that. So they contacted me and asked if I wanted to be involved on the panel for the Northern Arts grant, and get to kind of read applications and help choose and then facilitate the money. And that was very exciting. That was that was a domino effect. They found me through something else, so everything kind of came together that way.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like you're on a great path. Things are kind of working out, right? Yeah. Have you ever experienced roadblocks in your writing, or writer's block? I know for myself, sometimes it's either really a creative level, or sometimes it's I'm feeling I'm really lonely, and I just need to feel that inspiration, see other people's art, and talk to people about art. And so maybe community is lacking a little bit, but how have you overcome writer's block or creative blocks?
So I've been better at that in the last year or so, 2 years, I say, because prior to that, because you're right, it's a lot of, I think before the last couple of years, I would say I would be very quick to think, writer's block or whatnot. It comes from, just I don't have any ideas right now, or I'm not particularly inspired right now, and I have to be inspired to write. Really, but it's not really that. It's a lot of like social, if you're tired, if you're feeling lonely, or if you're feeling exhausted or drained from work, or if you're stressed out, you're having anxiety, depression, anything like that, can obviously affect like your willingness to write and any kind of inspiration that might come from that, or So now, because I kind of think I have as an adult, a better understanding of that. Usually when I'm feeling a particularly stubborn bout of like writer's block, the first thing I start doing is trying to like assess like, hey, what's causing the block? Like, what are we really tired? Are we really stressed out from like whatever it is? Is it personal life? Is it work? And start either trying to eliminate those stresses or deal with them in a way where we can, it's not taking up our whole, mental capacity. Now it's just, we can compartmentalize that and put it where it needs to be, so it's not overwhelming. And then at that point, I think we come to this other section that was a big deal before was, I'm going to wait for inspiration to come to me, which I think is such a big mistake, because I let it happen for so long. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with sitting down and kind of like being like, this is my hour or 2 hours or whatever it is, to sit down at my computer or my paper and just, try to focus or write, or even just put like a brainstorm, making up like a thought map or whatever it is you have to do to get those creative juices flowing, because they're not going to flow if you're not committing the time to, even trying to move the block along. It's not just going to move along on its own. So there have been periods of time in my like early adulthood where it's like I didn't produce too much work, or, because I just thought it would naturally go away. And now I'm a lot more disciplined, and I'm a lot more like annoying to my problem. Because I'm constantly attacking it and trying to, work with it. And so that's been really a gift, I think, that I've come to this realization. Now I can work with that, because you do end up, becoming more productive, and more things come out of it. But it's hard to sit down, especially if you're tired, or if you're overwhelmed with work or whatever it is.
Totally.
Immerse yourself into the arts at Fringe North Festival in Sault Ste. Marie. Enjoy theater, music, multi-arts adventures like no other, interactive kids activities in a beautiful historic city with nature at your fingertips and multicultural cuisine. Come join us. Plan your visit this August.
Yeah, that speaks to me so much. I think that's some really good advice of like tackling it and just kind of figuring out step by step, like what is the issue, like what is the root issue? Because if you're battling, it's like going from step 1 to step 10, expecting like really great results, but not figuring out the in between. That's interesting in terms of creativity and like the feeling of inspiration versus discipline, because I know I've been challenged with that as well, just like not really giving discipline the same weight as those sparks. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, and I think the tendency to do that for me anyway was, one over the other is more poetic than the other. It's more. I don't know what the word would be at this. It's more eloquent, I guess, to wait for inspiration to find you, and then and all like, and sometimes it does happen, and then it's great. More often than not, though, you do have to kind of sit in that like uncomfortable feeling, or like the nitty gritty of what's going on, because it's always something external that's probably blocking you creatively. And there was a period of time between November that just passed and February where I was unemployed for a little bit. And I got like so much work done because I wasn't, so mentally drained from different things. I was very much focused. And that really kind of solidified that belief system, was that, okay, it's usually external forces that are going to be hindering any kind of creative, process. And you can do both. It's just that you have to be able to recognize when we got to take a step back and kind of manage them.
Yeah, stepping back, and then also recognizing, like you mentioned this, is like putting in the work often leads to that inspiration anyways. Like if you don't develop the tools or the language or the skills to do what you want to do, you're never going to be able to do it. I don't know if that's kind of abstract way of thinking, but for me it's like this, if you have to be able to do it technically, like the technical kind of nitty gritty, just practicing for me, like I paint, so it's just like sometimes just sitting there and making work that I destroy, but I know that I'm developing tools. I'm still learning things, learning how the material layers, etc. And sometimes it comes, like that's what comes from, but it's also thinking and sitting and reflecting, allowing space for thought as well, for me at least. But yeah, that's interesting to hear. So can you tell me, without divulging too much about your play, because I know people are going to be excited to see it.
I hope so.
Yes, I think people are definitely excited, so it's going to be great. Yeah. Yeah. What is the set going to be like? Like, how have you planned? Like, how many actors are there? What's it going to be like?
Okay. So at present, What Remains will have about 4 cast members.
Nice.
We're looking for. We have planned a lot of the piece is going to be heavily dependent on lighting, sound, and we are going to be doing at this time, what we're thinking we're going to be doing for set is a lot of projection and shadow work. So a lot of projection set as opposed to physical set, but there will be lots of physical props. So this is kind of the thing that we're experimenting with right now. And the play itself is a bit of it's a dark comedy, right? It's got those gothic aspects to it. And so I think I mentioned this when I did my roundtable with Garrett, but what's important to me to really capture that ambiance or that feeling of, is to really play with the lighting and really playing with setting the atmosphere, for the audience to kind of feel like they're in that space. Like it is, but with setting the environmental elements to really put you there. So that's kind of what we're trying to kind of get on board with, and having, I think he kind of mentioned during that roundtable, so it's interesting because a lot of those like gothic, like especially like films or television will like do a lot of exaggerated set pieces, like costumes and whatnot. It's like if you think of Tim Burton and things like this, and I kind of was like, that's 100% what you'd think of. And in this instance, I think the reason I was so focused and like I'm thinking of keeping things as historically accurate as possible, although on a specific budget it's a bit difficult, so we're trying to kind of navigate that right now. But it's allowing everything else to take a back seat to the comedy and having the comedy really be the front runner of the play and let it be the star, because it's a very funny piece. It's a lot of physical comedy. There's a lot of written comedy, and we really want that to shine through. And having a projected set is practical and low budget, but really it's taking a backseat and letting the actors really do their thing and really be recognized in that, and not be overshadowed really by big set, which I think big set's beautiful, but for this I think it's appropriate to have them be really the center.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I'm kind of curious. I'm going to try to word this question as best as I can. You mentioned how lighting can affect and like create a space for the viewers and kind of, tell a story. So there are tools in theater. I'm not a theater person, but I can imagine there are tools in theater that you can use to tell stories and to create a show. I guess my question is, what do you think the power of theater is? Like, you're a storyteller, but what draws you to theater as an art form, as a way of communicating something? Because I think every artist has a medium, or some mediums, and they're interested in saying something. And it sounds like you're a storyteller. And yeah, if I compare it to myself, I'm interested in how we see visual things, just light, basically. And that's kind of specific. But what is it about theater that you're drawn to?
Well, theater specifically, it's there's different aspects, I guess. So as an artist, there's reasons I'm drawn to theater, and as a spectator, there are reasons I'm drawn to theater. But they kind of work together to really create the allure that it does. So as a spectator, personally, it's a very unifying experience, right? You're not sitting at home, in front of your television or I guess now your laptop or whatever, and you really get to go and sit. And that's something going to see a film in the theater, in the cinema, is going to sit with a group of people. You don't really know them, but you're sharing the experience, with other people, and you're laughing together, you're crying together, or, having that same outburst of emotion and not keeping it inside and getting to kind of feed off the energy in the room. And with the difference between theater and film, which I do both, and I have a great respect for both in their own respective ways. But with theater is that the actors and the performance is also live. So they're also interacting with you, even if they're not breaking that fourth wall, they're still in the room, and they're somewhere underneath the acting are aware that you are there. And they're probably very much feeding off of your energy too. If you're laughing, they're getting that kind of confidence, or that boost to keep going and perform with more fervor and whatnot. So it's I think it's a beautiful shared experience. It's very unique. And then when I'm thinking of theater as an artist or a storyteller, the allure there is that the outlandishness that you can put on stage is very unique, in my opinion. I'm not speaking for everybody else, but I think there's almost an invitation to be more outlandish and more extravagant on stage, that and it reads differently in theater than it does on screen, and it's fun and it's silly, or it can be very serious. But either way, it's that kind of emotion and that kind of energy in the room that you feel it in the room. I feel like it's almost palpable sometimes, especially if it's something serious or funny. You almost you kind of have to catch your breath. It's just such a nice social experience, even though you having your experience is different than this person and this person sitting in the same room, but somehow it's still very unifying. And it's just a lot of different avenues. There's hair and makeup and costume and lighting and this and that, and even collaborating like that is very exciting. Even behind the scenes, when you're not performing and you're not in the middle of a show, that stuff is also very exciting and very social. So I think that's why.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. I have huge respect for the performing arts. I think I mentioned it to another artist before, but I am drawn to, I guess I've been to theater performances and lots of music performances and stuff, and there's something, it's that energy, that exchange of not only with the audience members but with the performers too. That it's there's this vulnerability that comes with going up on stage and just being there and acting, or playing a guitar. It's very powerful, it's very moving. And I think especially in this day and age where we are so invested in screen time, it's pretty special to be able to keep that tradition going.
Yeah.
Do you feel as though the tradition of of theater inspires you? Like, what do you ever kind of research? Like you mentioned, you took a course in Shakespeare. Yeah, have you done any, like, do you do some research in plays? If you ever feel like, okay, I need some inspiration, where do you get your inspiration from?
So a lot of my pieces like that I do anyway are, the idea behind them is taking something that already exists and then recycling right into with new ideas and putting them together, because a very profound or a very fundamental belief of mine in art in general, but it really is shining through in what I'm experiencing in theater, is that you can coexist classical theater, or like pre-existing pieces and whatnot, and have them coexist with something contemporary. It doesn't have to be like an either or situation. I like putting them together. And so a lot of things that I write kind of depend on researching, and I think, and of course everything that we do really that's contemporary, those ideas they come from the past, and they're brand new ideas, but there's going to be something that comes from before. It's just totally, it's just how it is. And so the tradition of theater or whatever art form that you're in, like, I think it's important to always kind of know where that's coming from, or know, your history, or at least to the capacity that you're using it. And so like with this play, it has a lot of Shakespeare-esque, because it's kind of, he's not really the focus of this play, but he's involved, and so it really is, it was a lot of research and going back and getting to use Shakespearean pieces and things that I learned in high school, things I learned in university, and bringing them forward, the little homages that are really nice. And I think it's really important. It's important to me. I don't know if it's important to anybody else. I think contemporary ideas and contemporary artists and pieces that come out now in their own right are incredible. And I think they deserve their time in the sun. And I think it's important to remember that, they came from somewhere. They always come from somewhere, and it's something you learned. So
yeah,
it's important.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I think, through my experience and like what I've heard other artists say is that you're having the conversations with the past a little bit, like by like paying homage to certain artists, and in your case, like Shakespeare, which is monumental in the theater world and has influenced so much theater, and playwriting and even film, like, culture. But it's that idea that like you're actually, like, these artists are thinking about very similar things to what we're thinking. It's just there's historical context, like there's themes of love, loss, humor, death. It's very human. These human experiences that people are thinking about. These themes are not necessarily unique, but it's just how you incorporate it in the story, from my understanding. But yeah, I really like thinking about it in a way of like by allowing that history in, it actually enriches the conversation, and like you're not just relying on your own ego. I think you're kind of you're letting in this knowledge, and you're having conversations with history. Like you're allowing those conversations to happen, and so for viewers to, you're letting them in on it as well. In their knowledge of theater, or maybe they might be knowledgeable about some of the themes that you're talking about too. So that's pretty neat. That's pretty interesting. Do you have any people, like any specific, I don't know if I want to use the word icon, because inspiration can come from like a grandmother or, right, someone very famous. But do you have any people that have really inspired you over the past years? And this might not be even in theater. This can be just like writers. Like,
So, and I see, and now when you say inspiration could come from grandmothers and mothers, and I feel so bad. It's like, if I don't say, I feel like it should be more profound than what I'm gonna say. But anyway, no, for sure. A lot of my inspirations that are people that figures that I take from anyway are a lot of classical writers that I think, Shakespeare being one of them for sure, of course. My other big inspiration has been Edgar Allan Poe. He's one of my, like, I would say he's my top number one inspiration always. When it comes to poetry, that's a different set of inspiration. So like Allen Ginsberg, beat poetry. Yeah, that's Jack Kerouac, like that. It's and as you can kind of the pattern you can see, like it's a lot of like calls to the past for me personally.
Yeah.
They've been on the journey with me for a long time because I've been having I love that phrase, by the way. Now I'm going to start using that because it's just a nice way to say it. But I guess when I think about it, I've been having conversations with the past for many years, and that's kind of helped bring me here. And when I get to like, and it's different for each one, but even with film, like film is same thing. Like my inspiration comes from like Alfred Hitchcock and like, again, from the past, but it really is about, in every art form that I kind of try to pursue, I end up kind of doing that where I take something that I really idolize or that really moved me or spoke to me in some way, and then finding a way to make it my own, but, in a contemporary manner, and then kind of doing little callbacks to that. And it's kind of that, what you were saying earlier with the draw to theater, and this idea of doing conversations with the past is kind of go hand in hand. The theater is very experimental. I love that about theater as well. And it kind of shines through with things like this. Like I get to kind of play around. And I think that's a word that people associate with theater a lot, is play. It's very playful. You get to just kind of, experiment and play. And I think that's as an adult, especially, we you don't associate adults and playing, but I don't think we lose that part of ourselves as we get older. And I think that's what's fun about theater. You get to, you allow yourself, I guess, to play and have fun. So.
Yeah, what you're saying is so inspiring. And it's making me really excited to see your work. Can you tell me a little bit about how poetry and like your other writing has like is different from your theater writing, like screenplay, and how do you kind of approach theater, and what's different between poetry or story writing versus theater?
So in terms of theater, I think I approach theater a little bit more like, I hate to use this word a second time, but I approach it a little bit more outrageous. I'll also use a different word. I approach theater a bit more outrageously, a bit more like, what is the most ridiculous? Like I'll have an idea and think, what is the most hilarious or ridiculous way to perform this, and then rein it in from there. And it's allowing myself to go outside the box, not putting a restraint on it, and then reining it in, I guess. And more when it comes to film, I'm already in the box, and not to say that it's restricting in any way. It's just that I'm already thinking I'm already kind of within it's a screen, and it has to make sense on screen. It's not. There are different ways to be experimental in film than there are in theater. So I think I approach film a bit more seriously in terms of like, what can we afford to do? What will come through on screen the way we want it to come through, and how are we going to achieve those things? Whereas I think with theater, I can kind of come up with them on the fly, like a plethora of ideas of how can I achieve that, because it's more three-dimensional than film's a bit more two-dimensional. For writing, film, most of my scripts for film are a bit more, for me, they're a bit more serious. There's a less comedy involved, and I'm a very comedic person in general. I like to be funny. I like my stuff to be funny. But film, it's not. It just falls that way. I don't plan it that way. It's just what I think I can achieve on screen. I take the opportunity to make it a bit more sinister, or a little bit more brooding or mysterious, or just because I think it'll read really well on screen. You could do a little. The way you stylize it can be very effective and very, storytelling. It is, and I think it's just, so that's a bit different. And then in theater, again, it's a lot more comedy. I want it to be comedic. I want to hear the audience laughing, and I think that's a big thing for me is interacting with the comedy. Whereas I think if you make a film funny, I'm big with comedic films, but I want to be able to hear the laughter. And I think it's just the way it is. And it's not and again, it's not that I always plan it that way. I just kind of fall into it. I fall into comedy film, theater, and then I fall into a more scary, serious film script. And it's fine. I just kind of allow my creative process to take me along for the ride, really. I don't really always plan it that way. It takes me, I don't take it sometimes. And poetry I've not done in a long time, and I'll admit that it's been a while since I've written poetry because I've been very much involved in in the film and in theater world. And but I think when I was writing a lot of poetry, that was a lot more personal. That was a lot more my thoughts, my experiences, and my views on the world and what's going on right now. So it really didn't have a theme going. It really was just whatever, a bit of a Sam explosion kind of situation. And the other two are more stylized.
Yeah. That's really cool to hear. And I'm kind of curious. I don't want to go on too much about this. I'm just so interested in creative process. Do you think that maybe because of your education, with film, because you did a few years in film, and I'm assuming that's a little bit more technical, do you think that kind of made that box for you a little bit? You have the expectations of how to write, and what, not necessarily what to write, but kind of the structures there for you.
Yeah. So I think it's because I understand more, because that's my major, right? So I'm pretty much trained to know, and it's good to know because, especially when you're an independent filmmaker, you have to know the business side of things, or as much as you can. But more so the technical side of things, how, the reality of budgeting and how are we going to afford this and how is this going to come across. And to be honest with you, it's important. It's good to know those things and have that box, because then if you set out to write Star Wars but you have the budget for something small, it's going to be a lot of heartbreak. It's going to be a lot of, and so it really is important to do that. And it doesn't take, and I want to be clear about it too, it doesn't take any of the fun away at all when you're writing. It doesn't. It just keeps you, level-headed. It keeps your expectations real, and then you get to have fun within those parameters. And then maybe someday, when you get a bigger budget, you get to do those big ideas, and then you have more room to fly. But yeah, the education that I got in film was really fantastic, and it's important to have those realistic, this is how it's going to work, and this is how you can achieve all the ideas you want to portray within the parameters that you're going to get. And it does eliminate a lot of heartbreak, eliminates a lot of problems down the line, or lots of rewriting and reworking your whole story. It's a lot better. And I think, with theater, like I said, because I am so much more new, to this world, my expectations are always a bit where I have my director come in, kind of go, okay, how are you thinking we're going to achieve this? And I'm like, oh, sure. And we kind of have to, kind of sift through and make it.
Yeah.
Whereas in film, I'm already so ready for that conversation. I know where to kind of avoid those. That's already kind of, and I'm still learning everything in film, but I have more of a zeroed in perspective on that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's very much that I have that education behind it. So yeah.
Yeah. But I think to me, what's really exciting here is that balance. You have the education, but you're kind of just exploring, and I don't know, there's so much energy that I'm getting even through the screen that's really exciting. I think a lot about how to be an artist, or the kind of learning and unlearning that it takes to be creative, and to make those raw emotional pieces. But I really appreciate you chatting with me. I guess we can kind of wrap this up here pretty soon, but the last thing I want to ask you is if you have any advice for any artist, maybe specifically in theater or film or writing. But yeah, if you have any advice for young artists or old artists, anyone who wants to make something.
Oh God, that's a daunting question, isn't it? That's let me think. Yeah. Okay. So I would say, yeah, not that, because we talked earlier about, roadblocks and creative blocks and how to kind of handle those, or how I handle those, and maybe people can take from that. But the other thing I think that's important to remember in that same vein is that, like, don't try so hard to get over that, like, other than, like, dismissing those external factors that are kind of hindering your creative process or whatever it is. Don't over try, like, because you're gonna exhaust yourself, I guess, is my experience. Is that it's like, give yourself that hour to go at it and really try, but don't sit there for 3, 4, 5 hours and beat yourself down and, like, and allow yourself to fall into this strange trap that a lot of us fall into, which is, well, that probably means I'm not good at this, or I'm not a good writer, or, like, because that's so easy to fall into. And it's such a, like, fallacy. And that, like, I'm 29 and it's just, like, in the last couple of years, things have really, like, picked up, and but I've been writing since I was in the 2nd grade, and I knew I wanted to do this as a career in some form for most of my life. So it was there was a 1,000 times I could have been like, no, it's too hard. No, I this just means I'm not good. No, you have to stick with it. If you really want to do it, really stick to it and believe in yourself and advocate for your work. Because if you don't advocate for your work, nobody else is going to advocate for your work. So you really have to believe in what you're writing or creating, or, whatever form you're doing. Believe in your idea, in your voice, and really push it like it's your child. You are advocating for your child, in the world. If you have children, then that's probably what people do. I don't have children. This is kind of how I think of my work. These are my children. I created these things. I love these things, and I'm advocating for them. So that's kind of the best advice I could give to somebody. I guess if anybody wants to take my advice, is really have a passion for whatever it is you're doing, and believe in it and advocate for it.
Well, Samantha, I'll take your advice. I'll try to take your advice. I think it's some great stuff. And it's not even just that. It was the whole conversation. I think I learned a lot, about you as an artist, but also about a little more about the theater world. It's really interesting. So thanks so much for joining me. And thank you everyone for joining us. Merci, miigwech, gracias. Just a reminder that Fringe North 2024 will be from August 21st to the 25th. And you can catch Samantha Buttery's What Remains, among many other performances. Please check out our website and all of our social media channels in the description below for more information about Fringe North. And if you want to support all the work our team is doing here, please consider tipping the Fringe. Your support not only helps us, but also supports emerging artists and Northern arts. Every dollar counts. You can find the link for that below as well. We will be back with another episode next week. Can't wait to see you then. I will stop the recording.
Hooray there. I'm the Heather, the proud mascot of Fringe North 2024. You'll see me swaying in the wind throughout the festival, just like I do in the beautiful shorelines of Manitoulin Island. I'm an artist in my own right, bringing a touch of natural beauty wherever I go. Fringe North is all about celebrating the vibrant arts community in the north. And guess what? 100% of our box office sales goes straight to paying the amazing artists who bring the festival to life. But to keep the magic going, we need your help. If you spot me around the festival, feel free to ask me questions or discover cool facts about Fringe North. And most importantly, tip the Fringe. Your support helps us to continue to bring this incredible festival back year after year. So, want to support Fringe North? Tip the Fringe and let the arts flourish. Remember, Fringe North, expect the unexpected. For more information on how to tip the Fringe, head on over to SueFringe.com.